across the streets of hundreds of American cities, from New York to Atlanta, from Chicago to San Diego, as a new movement has taken shape, not just in the chants and posters, but in the spirit of those who refuse to be silent. The Good Trouble Lives On protest movement isn't just another moment in the long arc of activism. It's a revival. It's a rebirth of the principles that John Lewis embodied, and it's a fire lit by the injustice still faced by millions today. This movement is rooted in the moral urgency of our time, a continuation of generations who dared to confront oppression, challenge the status quo, and make, as Lewis called it, good trouble. Good trouble wasn't just a phrase. It was a way of life. John Lewis believed in nonviolent civil disobedience not because it was convenient, but because it was necessary. He marched, was beaten, arrested, humiliated, but never silenced, as he was the living bridge between the old civil rights movement and the new wave of digital age protest. And when he passed, something stirred across America. A silence broke, a conscience awoke. And now, in 2025, with mounting frustration over systemic inequality, voter suppression, racial injustice, police brutality, and immigration raids, as people have stepped back onto the streets with his name and legacy in their hearts. This isn't just about remembering. It's about continuing. As thousands gather at courthouses, city halls, state capitals, and even small town main streets, one thing is clear, as the spirit of protest is far from dead. In fact, it's more alive than it has been in years. While the initial wave of George Floyd-era activism had its moment, the Good Trouble Lives On movement is showing staying power. This isn't just a protest, it's a coordinated wave of civic resistance. It's smart, organized, and rooted in a clear call for policy reform and moral reckoning. It's being led by youth, immigrants, LGBTQ voices, faith leaders, as union workers, and marginalized groups from every walk of life. What unites them is a shared sense of injustice, a refusal to accept complacency, and a burning desire to disrupt the machinery of inequality. The protests began with coordinated walkouts from schools and workplaces, followed by sit-ins at government offices. Activists used social media to organize mass voter registration drives, mutual aid campaigns, and rapid response networks for people facing deportation or police surveillance, as street medics and legal observers have become regular fixtures at events, as churches opened their doors not just for prayer but for community safety zones. And everywhere, signs bore the same message: Good Trouble Lives On. What's remarkable is that this message transcends party lines, ethnic backgrounds, and generational divides. It calls upon every American to ask themselves, am I doing enough? Am I standing on the right side of history? The issues at the heart of the movement are as broad as they are urgent. Voting rights have become a battleground, as with dozens of states pushing new restrictions that disproportionately affect poor communities and people of color. Immigration crackdowns have led to increased fear in Latino and Muslim neighborhoods, with ICE raids becoming more aggressive and less transparent. Police accountability remains elusive, with reforms stalled in many cities. Meanwhile, economic inequality continues to grow, housing prices have skyrocketed, and workers across industries are striking for better pay and conditions. And behind it all is a growing sense that the American dream has been sold off piece by piece. In the face of all this, the people marching in the Good Trouble movement carry more than signs. They carry grief, hope, rage, and memory, as they chant for Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Elijah McClain, and the countless others whose names never made headlines. They speak the names of children detained at the border, of transgender victims of hate crimes, as of Native women who have disappeared with little investigation. This is not a single-issue protest. It is a moral reckoning, as it is an intersectional movement that acknowledges the many layers of American injustice and the urgency of confronting them all together. As what's striking is how this protest movement has embraced both tradition and innovation. On one hand, marchers sing the same hymns heard during the civil rights era. "We shall overcome" still echoes through the streets. On the other, they use live streams, QR codes, encrypted messaging apps, and digital petitions to mobilize millions. TikTok creators amplify the stories of organizers. Instagram becomes a battlefield for narrative control. Twitter threads analyze legislation, while Reddit users crowdsource legal advice. The movement doesn't just live in the streets, it thrives online, reaching hearts and minds around the world. The resistance has drawn both praise and backlash. Right-wing media outlets have tried to dismiss it as chaos, branding protesters as agitators or paid actors. Politicians who support the movement have faced threats, smear campaigns, and censorship. But despite the noise, the truth persists. These protests are not about division, they're about justice. And they're not going away, because behind every person in the street is a story. A teacher fighting for their students, a nurse who saw COVID devastate her community, as a veteran who wonders why their service didn't guarantee freedom for all, a grandmother who marched in 1965 and now walks beside her granddaughter. As perhaps what makes this movement so powerful is that it is not led by any single person. There is no charismatic figurehead, there's no centralized command. It is a decentralized, people-powered uprising. That makes it harder to stop, harder to discredit, and harder to ignore. It's happening everywhere, in cities, suburbs, rural towns, from Portland to Miami, from Minneapolis to Birmingham. And every time someone joins the march, they add to the chorus of voices saying enough is enough. As the presidential election looms, the good trouble protests have become an undeniable force. Candidates are being forced to answer hard questions. What are your policies on police reform? What will you do to protect voting rights? How will you stop the weaponization of immigration policy? Silence is no longer an option. Neutrality is complicity. And politicians who refuse to engage with the demands of this movement are being called out in real time. The pressure is building. The eyes of the world are watching. And while protest is powerful, it is only one piece of the puzzle. The real work continues long after the chants fade and the streets empty. It happens in courtrooms, classrooms, boardrooms, and ballot boxes. It happens when people organize tenant unions, when teachers fight for inclusive curriculums, when workers form labor collectives, when voters show up, especially in midterms, especially in local races. The Good Trouble movement is reminding Americans that democracy is not a spectator sport. It's a participatory act, and participation is resistance. The challenges ahead are immense. But the people involved in this movement understand that. They are not naive. They know that true change is slow, painful, and often met with brutal resistance. They've seen peaceful protests met with tear gas. They've watched politicians make promises and break them. But still they march. Still they organize. Still they believe that justice is not just a dream. It's a possibility, because history is not written by the powerful alone. It's written by the people who refuse to give up. It's written by those who get arrested for sitting in, who get fired for speaking out, who get ignored and then get louder. That is the legacy of John Lewis. That is the power of good trouble. And that is why this movement, as born from grief and grown in courage, is one of the most important stories in America today. This is not the end, as this is the beginning of a new chapter.